To help support our show, subscribe to Left Voice on Patreon so that we can continue to bring you more articles and episodes like this.
Welcome back to The Red Thread, a Left Voice podcast where we bring theory to life and talk about how to dismantle capitalism, one conversation at a time. I'm Melanie.
And I'm Emma. Today we are talking about the dire situation in Gaza and urgent need to end the genocide.
For almost 2 years, Gaza has been under a genocidal offensive by Israel. Official figures say over 60,000 people have been killed since Israel's latest offensive began, but the real toll is likely tens of thousands higher than that.
The siege and starvation of Gaza have reached extreme and horrific levels, with massacres at aid distribution sites and widespread hunger. International organizations, including the UN, Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch, have condemned Israel's deliberate starvation campaign. As of just a few days ago, the UN has officially declared a famine, the most extreme classification of hunger in Gaza.
And now, Netanyahu and his cabinet are moving forward with a plan to occupy the entire Gaza Strip, starting with an intensified attack on Gaza City. As of recording, Israel has completely destroyed more than 1,000 buildings in the Zaytun and Sabra neighborhoods of Gaza City since its invasion began in early August. The invasion has blocked access routes, preventing rescue and aid operations in the area and leaving hundreds trapped under the rubble.
It's obvious that they intend to continue committing war crimes and attempt to occupy and eventually annex all of Gaza.
To add to that list of war crimes, around the same time that the plan to invade Gaza City was announced, Israel murdered journalist Anas al-Sharif and 4 other members of the Al Jazeera team in Gaza City. They were bombed while sheltering in a tent marked for press. This has sparked global outrage. Gaza has become the most dangerous place in the world for journalists. Since October 2023, more than 230 have been killed and hundreds wounded.
As conditions in Gaza become more and more unlivable at the hands of Israel's siege and attacks, the U.S. State Department has taken this moment to suspend visas for people from Gaza.
This utterly disgusting and racist maneuver is a response by Trump to Laura Loomer's social media posts and pressure from the far right.
In this context, a manufactured famine as a weapon of war, flagrant assaults on those who seek to tell the truth about Israel's crimes, plus the repression of the pro-Palestine movement globally, all have sparked thousands to take to the streets around the world.
Some imperialist powers, which are morally, financially, and militarily supporting the genocide in Gaza, have for the most part hypocritically condemned Netanyahu's new plan. Yet it was them who made it possible by supporting Israel for the past 2 years at each new stage of the genocide.
To ease their consciences, some countries like Germany and France have carried out humanitarian airdrops. But when the crates dropped from the sky don't crush Palestinians seeking food or land in IDF-controlled areas where soldiers may shoot anyone who approaches, the rations distributed are totally insufficient and only constitute a further indignity for the Palestinians.
At this point, the Western imperialists really can't get away with direct, open support for the massacres in Gaza as outrage grows and mobilizations continue around the world. So instead, they're relying on international law and attempting to resuscitate the corpse of the two-state solution to buy Israel time and channel massive opposition to the genocide into an illusion of their own making. The two-state solution has proven to be impotent since the signing of the Oslo Accords, which on paper were supposed to provide Palestinian sovereignty in some parts of their original land.
And against the wishes and the will of the masses of the region who want to end the genocide, the Arab bourgeoisies continue relations with Israel. The government of Egypt, for example, has just signed a $35 billion agreement with Israel to import natural gas. While Sisi rhetorically criticizes the genocide, his government just redoubled Egypt's energy dependence on Israeli gas exports. This historic agreement was made public just hours after the announcement of the total occupation of Gaza.
To accompany this capitalist partnership, the Egyptian government is also suppressing mobilizations in support of the Palestinian people, with the most prominent example being the Sumud convoy, the global march that attempted to cross the border into Gaza. Hundreds of activists were beaten, detained, had their passports confiscated, and were deported by Egyptian authorities. And on top of that, 40,000 soldiers are now deployed in North Sinai by Egypt, not to break the siege, but to prevent a mass exodus of Palestinians fleeing Israel's latest wave of violence and destruction.
With the compromise of Egypt and other reactionary governments, the popular masses and workers in the region have a huge potential role to play to lift the blockade of Gaza.
The series of historic revolts in 2010 and 2011, known as the Arab Spring, remind us that the Arab working class is extremely powerful and can take down repressive regimes. It's not out of the question that the genocide in Gaza and the hatred accumulating against Sisi, as two possible examples, could spark another uprising in the region.
A new rebellion and successful movement of the Arab working class, organized against their complicit governments, could deprive Israel of its regional allies, send aid flooding over the land borders, and put an end to the massacres that are taking place across the borders of Jordan and Egypt.
That's why the Egyptian government and other regional powers have been so diligent about repressing solidarity protests for Palestine, because that international working class solidarity has decisive power. Within the borders of the Zionist state, Netanyahu is in a deep political crisis, and he sees only one path: escalating violence against Palestinians.
On August 17th, massive demonstrations took place in Israel, expressing a buildup of anger at Netanyahu for failing to bring back the hostages while continuing the genocide. But these protests are far from opposing the genocide in Gaza, as the international press might suggest. These mass demonstrations are focused on returning the hostages, but largely ignore the actual genocide of Palestinians.
There is a small but important minority of courageous activists who refuse to serve in the IDF, which is compulsory for most Israeli citizens. This small group of refuseniks openly declare that a state built on foundations of dispossession, displacement, occupation, and genocide is illegitimate. One of these people is 19-year-old Yona Roseman, who was arrested earlier this month for refusing to be part of the genocide. The mainstream press refuses to report on these instances, but they are part of a generation of Jewish youth who are breaking with Zionism.
So, these protests in Israel involving millions of people who are critical of Netanyahu have exposed a crisis for his government. At the same time, sections of his own right-wing base are threatening to oust him if he does not intensify the assault on Gaza. The sheer scale of the protests, though not anti-Zionist, puts real pressure on the regime in a moment of military escalation. Meanwhile, acts of global solidarity continue to spread. The Sumud convoy, the global march to Gaza, and various flotillas were all attempts to break the siege. At the end of August, yet another flotilla will sail to Gaza in protest of Israel's siege and attempt to deliver humanitarian aid, this time in a fleet of dozens of boats with activists from 44 countries.
These actions represent a vital reaffirmation of internationalism, in line with workers and students all over the world who have taken part in protests, encampments, divestment campaigns, and boycotts.
Exactly. And another wave of protests has taken place around the world. Argentina, for example, saw its largest demonstration for Palestine to date, which is especially notable because Argentina, under Javier Milei, has a very Zionist and right-wing government.
Thousands marched in Sydney and London, and in New York City, thousands of people rallied with speakers including Mahmoud Khalil and Chris Smalls.
These mobilizations show that people across the globe reject the Zionist project and the genocide and are sick of watching their governments enable it.
Here in New York City, public opinion strongly shows this rejection of Israel's genocide and support for the Palestinian people. In a poll of Democratic primary voters from the most recent election we had, 78% said Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. 79% supported restricting weapons sent to Israel, and 63% supported arresting Netanyahu if he came to New York City.
So we know that the left, the youth, and the working class of New York support Palestine and oppose Israel, as well as the politicians here who continue to back its genocide. In fact, this sector is probably one of the main reasons that Zoran Mamdani won the mayoral primary. And we have to take that energy and power much further than his limited program.
New York City is the financial capital of the world, and all of its wealth and influence is made possible by workers. The same unions that have mobilized their base to canvass for Zoran should mobilize in full force against this genocide.
We fight against the starvation, the genocide, the siege, but also against Israel's brutal occupation of Palestine. Our fight is for full liberation of the Palestinian people against the 76 years of dispossession, displacement, apartheid, occupation, and ethnic cleansing.
Workers and youth are pointing the way forward. Port workers in several countries have used their strategic position to block arms shipments to Israel. We've seen the eruption of a student movement on a scale not seen since the 1960s.
Exactly. Hundreds of thousands continue to march in cities around the world, with huge numbers of workers and youth challenging imperialism and Zionism. These actions show our collective power. To end the genocide, all workers and unions have to rise up, join the protests and strikes for a free Palestine. We have to fight until we win.
That's it for this episode of The Red Thread. If you liked this episode, share it with your coworkers, your comrades, your neighbors, and your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to The Red Thread to listen to more episodes like this one. Leave us a review, donate to the Left Voice Patreon if you can, and reach out to our contact form if you want to write with us, read with us, or stay in touch.
Thanks for listening.